Broads Media.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome on into Sports Talk with Broads. Today we have a very special guest, Jim Jackson, play-by-play announcer of the Philadelphia Flyers. We're kind of going to go around the four sports teams, take a look at what's going on. It's a painful day today with the 76ers losing that Game 7. But, Jim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. I've had a chance, this being my first year not doing Phillies in 15 years, to watch a lot more of the Stanley Cup playoffs than normal, watch the Sixers, watch some of the Phillies, watch the U.S. Open golf. I mean, I'm back to where I was maybe as in my childhood, where I'm watching sports all the time now, whereas before I was hockey, baseball. Now I'm able to branch out. So I'm doing all right, enjoying the beginning of summer.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think we have to just touch on the Sixers because it's so fresh. And for me, I'm in pain, right? It's not what I wanted to see. I'm like surprised that I'm not surprised because they were the number 1 seed. You're supposed to beat the 5th seed, and you lost 3 home games, which is a little crazy. At the same time, you know, the Ben Simmons thing has always been a problem, and you're playing 4-on-5 in the postseason, and that's hard to do offensively. So how do you, being around the Philadelphia sports world for as long as you have, and you see the reactions with the fans, I mean, how do you see this moment? How do you see this loss? How do you see the reaction?
You know, it's really interesting because I've always seen the reaction because I have Twitter. And I listen to sports talk radio, and I see shows like yours and all that. So, I mean, I have an idea of what the reaction's been about the Sixers through the years, through the whole trust the process, the whole thing. But I haven't actually seen that many games because the Flyers and Sixers pretty much conflict. And then once I'm done with the Flyers, into baseball. So I really haven't watched the Sixers very often. I saw their loss, of course, to Toronto, the epic loss a couple of years back. I saw none of the bubble last year. But this year I was able to watch all of their playoff games, and I understand the Ben Simmons angst. It's real. He's got a problem right now. He can't hit free throws, which is huge, and as a result, almost afraid to take shots, even inside shots like last night, because if he gets fouled, he's got to go to the line. So it's a major problem. But I also think there are other issues with this team, and one of them is the big guy. Joel Embiid, to me, in this series, was not the guy that was going to carry a team to an NBA championship. I mean, if you think about the key points of this series, they were what? Game 1, when they came out flat as a pancake, and he was one of them. Game 5, when they absolutely collapsed, and he was a big part of that collapse, including the missed free throws, but also some missed shots. And then toward the end, maybe most scary to me, he didn't want the ball. He didn't want to take the shot, which if you're Joel Embiid, who always wants to be the focus of attention, and you don't take shots, then that's not a good sign. I mean, people were all over Tobias Harris. At least he tried to take shots, but he missed. But and then of course last night, where Embiid was better, he was good, and then he hit some key shots in the fourth quarter. But then again, down the stretch, missed, and he had 8 turnovers in the game. So I mean, I don't think that Ben Simmons, that problem there is overshadowing to some degree, in my mind, as big, maybe even a bigger concern for this team when you look big picture. Is Embiid a guy that's going to carry you? He's always injured and probably always going to be injured. He's a big man. He plays an athletic game, but a game where he's on the floor a lot. So is he ever going to be a guy where we're talking in May, June, July? You know, you never know the months we play anymore.
Yeah.
But, I mean, in the playoffs where he's going to be healthy, I have a serious doubt about that. So if we give him a pass because he's playing in a torn meniscus this year, and in a totally normal circumstance, I would. But I think he's always going to be playing with some kind of injury. So if he wasn't going to do it this year, when they were so unbeatable at home, top seed in the East, playing an Atlanta team that, although they looked great against the Knicks, I did not see much early in this series that led me to think they were going to beat the Sixers. And then last night, Trae Young's 1 for 500 in the first half, and they can't build up a lead. I knew right then this is big trouble. I was like, Trae Young can't hit the broadside of a barn in the first half, and they were what was it at halftime? 1 point tied. I can't even remember, but it was really
it was a 4-point game by the Hawks. When you mentioned it, Trae Young was shooting an outrageously poor percentage, and it was a 4-point lead for the Hawks.
Yeah.
But here's what I'll say about the Joel thing that makes me feel optimistic. I think, well, first off, in 2021, the big man is such a weird thing to have because
That
of
is
how the
true.
game is played that I think if you had a normal point guard that actually was a threat with the ball in his hands, it just, you're asking a 7'2" guy to do so much every possession because of Ben's flaws, where if maybe you change that on the floor, it just naturally allows Joel, it's less stress on one player because the whole of Ben is fixed. Now, I don't know if it's that simple. Is it that black and white and that this or that? I don't know. Maybe that's too simple, but
Yeah,
I need to see it first.
that makes sense. But I'll also say this. Joel Embiid is not your typical post player. He's out by the 3-point line a lot, and that's on his own. That's not because of Ben Simmons. That's
Right.
because Joel likes to show us he can fire the threes because he wants to be the guy in the spotlight.
Sometimes you need to get Ben some space, but you're right. He does. The reason
No,
we love Joel is
I'm
he's
7'2",
out.
and a guy like him. I mean, there were games this year where he was unstoppable down low, and then he'd be out near the 3-point line. I'm like, get down low. I'm not saying to give Ben room. I'm just saying because you're in the block. I mean, that guy is almost unstoppable when he's on. He wasn't unstoppable in this series, though, because he missed a lot of shots that he should have made. As for Ben, he's really a weird case because he does do a lot of things well. I mean, he's a great defensive player. The times when Young had his biggest problem in this series was when Ben was on him. I mean, if Ben was on him from the beginning of the series, they probably win game one. And we're not talking about a 7-game series at all.
That's a great point.
Doc took a little while to realize that. They changed up. They almost won that game somehow. But his defense is good, and he finds people with the ball. He just can't shoot. I mean, we talked about this, can't or won't shoot. And then the free throws became such an issue. I mean, that's fixable, I would think. I think it's a mental block right now. So I think the free throw shooting, he's never going to be a great free throw shooter, but he's not going to be a 30% free throw shooter. I mean, it's almost like a Chuck Knobloch thing in baseball right now. He just can't. He's got the yips. So that was really, really tough. But there's other holes. I mean, Seth Curry, I love the way he played, but he can be taken advantage of on the defensive end. And Tobias, people think he shrinks from big moments. I would say that he at least tried. He just didn't hit a lot of the shots. It was, if you ask me, and I can very honestly tell you, I had thousands of reasons to root for the Sixers this year. I early on put some ducats down on them because I thought I thought this was a team that, and the value is good. Never doubt Vegas, right? They knew, but the odds were so, even as they were rolling, Brooklyn's odds were like way down low and the Sixers were way up. And I said, there's just too much value there. So I took a little plunge, and I was really thinking as I see, Harden go down and then Kyrie go down, and thinking that they could probably beat Brooklyn right now. And I'm pretty sure they would have if Brooklyn had gotten past Milwaukee. I'm not sure they would have beaten Milwaukee. But bottom line is they didn't even get past Atlanta. So to me, there's no way you can shape this as a positive season for them. It's the expectations were so high. I mean, for the Flyers, the expectations were so high. There's no way you're pointing, their season was a positive. This team at least made it to the second round. So maybe you could say something, but they should have beaten Atlanta. This was a young team and an Atlanta team that did not play well last night, and they still beat the Sixers at home. So really disappointing. And I'd be interested to see what the Sixers do. I think Rivers is a great coach, but whenever you lose, people are going to pick this and pick that, and he didn't do this and he didn't do that. But basketball, I think more than any sport, is all about the stars. And
yeah, I agree.
Stars
I
have
think
to
with coaches, in the NBA is like you get all the blame when the losses happen, and then you get too much praise when the success happens. When I watch Kevin Durant shoot the basketball 5,000 times and make those shots, or miss that last shot, or whatever it is. I do think to a degree you saw why Doc Rivers has the resume that he has with losses. At the same time, though, this roster is completely flawed, and that's more of an issue, I think, than it is the actual, coaching aspect of it. But I think you can nitpick in that area. I guess I want to ask you, do you think that this Ben Simmons drama is basically where we are with the Carson Wentz, where there's so much noise, whether Carson Wentz can play somewhere else or not, it's just not here in Philly where it's going to fit? With Ben, is it time to make that move where he might be okay in another area, but it's just not here where it's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough for it to happen. The Carson Wentz one was really weird for me because, he was MVP caliber. I'm not sure Ben Simmons has ever been MVP caliber. He's been a good player, a very good player, and wasn't obviously in these playoffs. But Carson Wentz went from an MVP caliber player to a well below average quarterback. And it's hard for me to blame the injuries on that. It had more to do with what's going on in his head. I think he's going to be tremendous in Indianapolis. I really do, with Frank Reich there and the whole
Me
thing.
too.
So that is scary. If with Ben Simmons, could he go somewhere else and thrive? Maybe. Can he thrive here is what you're asking. I don't know. There's a lot. As much as he tries to say all the talk doesn't bother him, I've been around enough athletes. I've been around long enough to know that even when they're saying that, it does bother them. And it would be tough. I've met Ben. I've had Ben on my show when I was doing the Phillies. I like him. I don't, people say he's not Philly. I don't really buy that. And they say Embiid is Philly, and I'm not sure I buy that either. So, well, I mean, if you like guys who just want he's a drama king. Joel Embiid is a drama king. Let's face it. Every time he hits the floor, he's got to grab for something. Like last night, even the other leg.
That's the NBA, though. No, they kind of have
true.
those
That is true. That is true. The star. I mean, Trae Young is Sidney Crosby when he was a rookie, right? Flop, flop, flop. Complained to officials. That's what he reminded me. Now Crosby grew out of that for the most part.
Yes, he did.
He doesn't flop very much anymore. Still barks at officials, but everybody does, but not overly. And you talk to Crosby, he'll tell you, yeah, I did too much of that as a young player. And Young is a young player, pardon the pun. But man, I mean, just complaining about calls and just trying to draw fouls all the time. So you're right. That is the NBA, and Joel fits into that. It was like when they lost to Toronto. I know that area very well, where the locker rooms are, and he has to have that emotional moment out where the cameras are. That was, to me, it was like you couldn't go into the locker room there and not have cameras showing you hugging was it his girlfriend or his fiance and crying and all that. I mean, to me, it's like he's doing that to be seen. I mean, so to me, I you can win with a guy like that, no doubt.
You're killing me right now.
A lot of the NBA players are like that, right? You're right. But for me, I don't think he's necessarily is that Philly. The Philly fans love those players who crave attention. I don't know, maybe. I don't know. I don't think so. As for whether Ben can succeed here, he's going to have tremendous mental resolve, right? Be able to block out a whole lot of stuff. I'm not sure a human can do that. So you might be right. They'd have to move him. And then it gets tricky. I mean, I don't know how you move him, where you go.
It's crazy that we're actually here. But before we continue, I want to ask you, because you're doing some great things, and you have a broadcasting coaching camp going on, and I just want to give you an opportunity to kind of go into detail about how you can sign up for that and what actually goes on when you do it.
Yeah, I basically have talked to kids throughout my career when they would email me or some way get in touch with me. And it'd be a phone call and, how you doing? And, I might listen to their clips or something, but I never had enough time to really put a lot into it. I just didn't have the hours because I was doing two sports. But with losing the Phillies, I ended up, obviously I have summers off now. And immediately we thought about, let's do something. And then when the pandemic kind of shut things down, I didn't have any hockey after baseball ended last year in November, December, we got right into it and was really floored by the response. Had a lot of people who took interest in it, and I took interest in them. And now I feel like I'm their mentor. I'm really enjoying it. It's very rewarding. The one drawback was it's not necessarily cheap. So for some people I'd get from a lot of kids, I just can't afford that. And I'd say, well, I understand that, but for the people who are paying, I can't, just give it away for anybody else. So we came up with this idea for this summer to have group sessions, camps, seminars, whatever you want to call them, 3 hours. 3 different ones, one coming up here at the end of this week, one in July, one in August, 2 sessions, one for kids up to 17, one for kids 18 and above, because the kids who are 18 and above usually have clips and they're more interested in specific things, whereas kids in junior high and high school are more broad-minded as to what they want to do. So the sessions would be different. So we split them up that way. And we're going to see how this goes. Group sessions as opposed to the others, which were one-on-one. And all virtually done at this point. And we'll see how it goes because I really enjoyed the one-on-ones. And if you do these camps, you'll have the potential to do the the one-on-ones at half price moving forward. So, and it'll be 3 hours where I'll talk about the business, getting into the business, broadcasting techniques, as well as kind of finding your own niche. A whole bunch of things to talk about, and obviously I'll answer any questions they have. So I'll talk about whatever they want to talk about, but basics of broadcasting, and and hopefully get to know some kids and begin some more mentoring.
That's beautiful. Yeah, we'll have all that information down below in the description of this on the audio form and the visual as well. And, coming from someone who I've been in this for about 2 or 3 years now, and I'm kind of moving my way through, that is a huge opportunity that people should definitely take advantage of, because it's a tough business to crack into, and all that information is very useful.
Your story is really a story that people should know about, because there's a lot of kids out there who don't go to broadcasting, a school that has broadcasting, or don't get a communications degree. I'm not sure. Did you get a degree in
Yeah. So when I was playing college hockey, I just went for business communications because I had the communication name. And then once I realized I wanted to hang up the skates to pursue this, which was the hardest decision of my life, but my coach, he was like, I don't tell everybody this, Broads, but like, you have to chase this because you have it. And that meant a lot to me. And I love that coach to death. I'll never forget it. And, I ended up transferring to Rowan and getting a sports communications degree. But I was basically, just because of where this world is with technology, YouTube, you can make your own podcast.
Yeah.
It was almost like I was involved in the business just based off of my own, just building my brand off to the side. And the school was just, I need to make sure I finish this off and get the degree. But just, there's so much involved in technology these days. It was like a combination of both, of building my own brand with where we are in society. And then I ended up getting my sports communications degree at Rowan.
Yeah, well, you did well. And I've had some students. One was a car salesman into his late 20s, decided to get into broadcasting. He's now 33. He's still broadcasting U.S. junior hockey. He's way too good for that level. And he's now had a couple interviews in the AHL since we had our classes. And I've got one gentleman who's in his early 50s who's getting involved like this with podcasting and with YouTube shows and so forth. And, he took the course. So it's not all your standard going to college to be a broadcaster. It's not for just play-by-play. It's for people who want to do talk shows. It's for people who want to do sideline reporting, who want to anchor, any kind of sports broadcasting. I do think sometimes they see my name and they think play-by-play camp.
Right.
And I certainly accept play-by-play candidates, but it's really for broadcasting. People are interested in any form of sports broadcasting and even news broadcasting. I mean, it's really about being able to present yourself in front of a camera, using inflection in your voice, pacing, and so forth. And people say, well, that's play-by-play. Well, it is, but what you do is also inflection and pacing. When you get excited, and I can tell, I've seen your stuff, you get excited, you need to do it at the right time, right? And you got to save a little for this level when a team loses game 7 at home, that kind of thing. But there's the same kind of broadcast techniques kind of, of course, through all of these different job assignments. So we talk about them all.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do want to touch on the Philadelphia Flyers, by the way, with that jersey in the background, just to bring it back to a little of what's going on. And I was so devastated with what we saw this year. The defensive zone was where it all started. It was just garbage is what it was. You had 2-on-1s 5 inches away from the crease, and now we're begging Carter Hart to make these stellar saves. Now, I thought Carter Hart got beat glove side a lot, and I think other teams picked up on that, and they started to shoot short side, and they started to beat him there and all, but it really did all stem, just like the Sixers, it all stems with Ben Simmons. I think a lot of their problems start there. I think a lot of the problems with Carter Hart, it all stemmed with that bad defensive core, and I know you could probably take this in so many directions, but where did you see the problem with this Flyers team? Where did you see it going off in the wrong direction? Because where they were the year before, the expectations was so high compared to where we were, and it was devastating. I'm watching right now Montreal, and I'm watching Vegas, and I'm watching the Islanders and Barry Trotz in that boring system, but they just keep winning games. It's like, wow, there's still teams watching hockey, and I feel like they've been out of my life for too damn long at this point.
Yeah, it was, I've said it to many people, it was in my 28, coming up on 28 years here, the most disappointing season. because there were worse seasons. 06, 07, the worst season in franchise history. They were certainly worse than this year. And there were other years in my first year. There were other years where they didn't make the playoffs where they were worse. But this was the most disappointing because of the expectations and because we've spent a good part of the last decade building toward this team taking that next step. And last year they kind of took one step and you were expecting another step this year. And instead they fell back down the steps. And it was really disappointing. Why? My whole take on this season is early in the year, I completely agree with you. The play in their own end was awful. And Carter Hart and Brian Elliott, and Elliott's numbers were good. Hart's numbers weren't so good, but he was actually playing well, even though he was giving up 3 or 4 goals a game. That's how bad they were defensively. And when he snapped in Boston, and that was very early in the year, that snap was more the way the team was playing, in my mind. Because at that point, Carter Hart was still stopping a lot of pucks. He was just seeing too many of them. And gradually through the maybe 4 to 5 week mark of the season, the goaltending started to crack. And this happens when you're playing poorly in front of them for so long. The weird thing is the team actually started playing a little bit better then. All the analytical numbers, all the shot numbers were telling you they were turning it around. They went from last in the league by a wide margin in shot differential to middle of the pack by the end of the year. They were actually outplaying teams more often, but now the goaltending, Carter really did go south. And Brian Elliott wore down, and the goaltending became a problem later on. Now, when I say the defense in front of them, you're saying defense core, it's the whole group of players. They have a lot of forwards who began the year without a commitment, in my mind, at least it didn't show.
Travis Konecny started flooding that zone, looking for some odd man rushes.
I mean, a defenseman can step up if there's back pressure, right? If you don't have that forward coming back, and then in their own zone, they got to have the help down low too. So it was just a team-wide thing. I mean, Chuck Fletcher's talked about his main goal when he took over was to work on that goals against. And they did last year, not this past season, but the season before. They were a very good defensive team in the top 10 in goals against. And for a 5-month stretch, they had the second most points in the NHL. So to me, that's not a streak. That's the sign that this is a good team. And we didn't see it this year. So what to do if you're Chuck Fletcher? Do you think that maybe it was a write-off because it was a strange year, the COVID hit, they had a brutal schedule. Other teams had brutal schedules too, but not many as brutal as theirs. The teams that had really brutal schedules, in other words, the teams that had the COVID outbreak and then had to jam more games in, Buffalo, New Jersey, Vancouver, they really didn't do very well. Minnesota is the one team that survived one. Washington had one, but they kind of played through it, so their schedule never got ridiculously bad. And I'm not saying it was the schedule itself, just the lack of practice time for a young team. Now, I know this was the theme of the exit interviews, and I know the fans didn't like it, but it's the truth, especially with Alain Vigneault. He's a practice coach. His practices are very good, and he had no use of his best tool for most of this year. So I do think there is some validity to that. And if so, if you're Chuck Fletcher, does that factor into how many changes you make this year? Is Travis Sanheim what we saw this year or what we saw the year before? Is Phil Myers what we saw this year or the year before? Travis Konecny. I can go right down the list of those young veterans. They're not rookies anymore. Young Ivan Provorov, those young veterans, and not many of them, except Joel Farabee, who really was not even quite a veteran, a second-year player. He's the only one that took a step forward last year. Almost all the rest of them either leveled off. I'd say Provorov, maybe level, maybe a little drop.
Well, let me ask you this, if we're talking about some of those defensemen. Is the answer Seth Jones or Dougie Hamilton? Because I think, obviously, the Niskanen loss, I mean, that was clear as day that you lost it. But even with losing him, it's hard to think that he made it that much of a drop-off, But I don't know. How much would... See, I thought Ivan Provorov, when he's getting a new defenseman, and I was a stay-at-home defenseman. I did the chip pucks off the glass, let it go in the neutral zone, and I played PK. Like, I was your sixth defenseman role. I knew what I had to do. But I just wonder, because now he's playing with Ghost, or because he's playing with when they tried to break up Sanheim and Myers, he had to play that steady role instead of Matt Niskanen being that, and then you could have Ivan Provorov play a little bit more of a two-way game. And I think like Seth Jones, can you apply Seth Jones or Dougie Hamilton with Ivan Provorov, which would then allow Ivan Provorov to play more of his game instead of trying to play that Matt Niskanen role? Does that make sense?
It makes sense, although I'm not sure, especially Dougie Hamilton
Yeah, because
fits
he
that
likes to
role.
play offense as well a
Yeah,
little bit
I
too.
think Provy would have to sit back more if Dougie Hamilton's, and especially watching him in the playoffs. I was like a scout watching a lot of these unrestricted free agents this year. I mean,
Yeah,
he's a risk taker. He is
he
not
is.
a stalwart in his own zone, Dougie Hamilton. I think Jones is a much better all around defenseman. He might fit more of that Niskanen role, though I think he's likes the upside a little more than Niski did. But I would prefer, if it were my choice, and it's not, Seth Jones over Dougie Hamilton, just in terms of the player themselves. Now, what you've got here is one you're going to have to trade for and then sign. Jones has one more year left. One's a free agent you're going to have to sign for, it appears, $8 million. And Dougie Hamilton brings a lot to the table. I don't think he's an $8 million player myself. I mean, that is going to lock you down. You will have spent as much as you can spend on your defense corps with Provy where he's at now, $8 million on Hamilton. I don't think you can re-sign Sanheim if you go $8 million on Hamilton. Myers is going to come up again. I don't know where you go financially if you saw. Now, is Seth Jones going to be an $8 million player in another year? I don't think he's that either, but maybe. So they might have to go that route either way. These are numbers.
How about Cam York? Where's he at? Like, see,
Well,
and
I like him.
I do too, but I watched Cole Caulfield, and I remember at the draft, and look, I
Oh,
don't
I
want to be
know.
that guy, but when you put up that amount of numbers and those amount of goals, it's like, this kid has it. And now I'm watching
He
him
does.
score these overtime game winners, and I'm like, oh, I don't care about size. Johnny Gaudreau's small. These guys are small. Small's nothing anymore. I wanted to see that, but I don't want to rule out Cam York because I still think he could be a very good defenseman as well.
Yeah, I mean, what they were thinking with that draft was we're going to get a forward we really like and Cam York as opposed to just Caulfield. So they got Bobby Brink, and they're hoping that he's not going to be Caulfield. He's not that kind of player, I don't think, but I think he's going to be an NHL player. I think the key is in today's NHL, the most important player outside of the goalie is your puck moving defenseman. It's gone that way from a center. Used to be the center. Number one center is your most important player. But I think the way the game's gone now, you're looking at it, it's getting that puck moving. And Cam York can do that. So we'll see. He's not the biggest guy in the world either. He's going to get pounded. We saw adjustments in just a couple games. We saw teams adjusting and really getting in on him. But he does look like he has that high hockey IQ. He has the skating ability. He has the imagination. So I think he's going to be a really good NHL player. I think he could slot in next year in your second pair. I really do. But you're still looking for that first pair complement to Provorov. So, I really thought Phil Myers could be that. It didn't work. I don't know whether that means it's not going to work at all. I think that he's a kind of guy who really does need practice time. So, Chuck's not in an easy situation here because Travis Konechny is he the guy that led the team in goal scoring, or is he the guy we saw last year? I mean, I can go right down the list here. Which guy do you judge in terms of making your moves? The player from last year or the player from the year before? It's not going to be easy for Chuck. I cannot tell you in trying to read his comments which way he's going with this. I mean, he could be on the verge of making a huge blockbuster with Buffalo for Eichel to completely change this team. I don't know. I can't get a feel for where Chuck is with this, whether he really wants to break it up. I know the organization feels, and they should, a lot of pressure about next year. I mean, this is the last chance for that group. And I'm not talking about the Giroux Voracek group. Everyone gets fixated on that. They're the veterans now, and not one of them outside of Kevin Hayes really had a bad year. Giroux, Voracek, Couturier, Van Riemsdyk, Braun. I'm missing one or two other veteran guys. They were pretty much what you expected you were going to get last year. It was the young veteran group that was supposed to take hold of the team and take that next step. That's what happened to last year. And now the big question is, how much of an assessment do you put on last year versus the year before? If it's on last year, big changes are coming. If it's on the year before, maybe not. Maybe just some tweaks here and there. Going to be interesting.
Yeah, it definitely is. I got one more Flyers before we transition a little bit to a couple Phils. But you mentioned the core, and I'm a big Giroux guy. The slander that he's the problem, strip the seat. It's all nonsense. I mean, this guy's going to have 1,000 games played, 1,000 points, and we're going to sit here and blame that it's Claude Giroux's fault. It's just a joke. He's a hell of a player, and he does. I mean, talk about what he does in the face-off circle, and I get it, moving him to wing. Maybe that's better for him at this point in his career or whatever, but he's an amazing player. I understand Voracek. I'm not even a guy that can't stand Voracek, but he's another one that's targeted a lot. I just wonder if do you think it's possible with Seattle and shaking it up there that it's possible that Chuck Fletcher maybe ties in a prospect, something to say, Seattle, we want to switch things up. We know you need to take some sort of money. Here's a player that can maybe give you 60 to 70 points, veteran player. You can start your franchise there, and you give him something to take Voracek just to change something up. Do you think that's in play and reasonable?
I think anything's in play because, as you say, they have to get to the floor. So they're going to take on some salary. Now, Vegas, George McPhee was a maestro, right, with how he handled that. Whether the Kraken can do that again with all the teams now aware of how this works, I would be surprised they can pull off some of those trades. So I think they are going to need some veteran guys with salary. I mean, Van Riemsdyk's another guy that they might be thinking of. Ghost carries some salary with him. I'm not sure which direction they're going to go with the expansion draft, but yeah, I mean, it's a possibility. I don't really consider that anymore as a huge change in the culture of the Flyers. To me, and Giroux's the captain, and I've never heard players complain about Claude Giroux.
Yeah,
never heard them after they leave complain about Claude Giroux's leadership. I've heard him quite the opposite, say he's a very good leader. The problem with Claude Giroux, I think, to the populace is that he doesn't use the media to lead. There are captains in the past here, Keith Primo as an example, who would go right, he'd say whatever he was feeling to the media, and maybe sometimes that was a way of getting his message to a teammate. I don't know. And there have been others who have done that, but that's not Claude Giroux. Does that make him a bad leader? No, it does not. In fact, most of the players who I talk to, and also when they speak publicly, rave about his leadership. So I don't think there's anybody who wants to win on this team more than Giroux. So I've never been able to get that either, other than that, again, as I said with Connor McDavid, he hasn't been able to get his team past the second round as captain. He did so, in fact, had a big role in the team that went to the finals in 2010, but he wasn't captain. So to some people in this town, that doesn't matter. He wasn't wearing the C then. I mean, I don't think he's the problem at all. And I don't think Jake's the problem. And I don't think the veterans, Chuck and Toure is a great two-ways. I mean, they've got some veterans. It was all about those younger players. So how do you break things up? I mean, from a salary cap standpoint, if they could move Jake, I think it would help. They might be able to go out and get a Seth Jones or a Dougie Hamilton. From a culture standpoint, I don't think they have to get rid of any of those veterans. I don't think that that's the problem with this team. I know there's people out there who think it is, but I mean, I've just been around. Jake Voracek played, I thought, in the season this past season, played with a lot of intensity. I mean, he might have struggled a little early, might not have been in perfect shape to start the year, but I think that once he was on, there were some games where you could tell he's trying to will the team to victory. Giroux did will the team to several wins. Couturier was Couturier, not quite as good this year, but still one of the better two-way players. Kevin Hayes has got to pick it up. He did not have a good year. Now he had that core situation, which if you played, when you don't have your core as a hockey player, you aren't very good. It's just, I mean, Sidney
I must
Crosby.
have not had my core the whole career.
There you go. But I mean, you remember Giroux and Ghost coming off of that. They didn't play well. And even Crosby. So it's a tough injury. So hopefully he'll bounce back. So I don't think that veteran group, if you can move them to help the cap situation, okay. But I don't think there's this need to move them to change the culture that you hear, or see on Twitter and all that. I don't think that's that big a deal. It's more so the money. And then from a changing the culture standpoint, I think it has more to do with, do you move any of the young pieces? Do you move a Travis Sanheim? Do you move a Travis Konecny? Do you move any of those guys who are now reaching their so-called prime?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and they brought back Scott Law. I thought the contract was good. I like that. I mean, there's a reason why that you were thinking about dangling him at the deadline, and teams would have wanted him to add to that playoff run. But brings versatility, PK, depth.
Do
He
they
can play
protect
center.
him?
He can play wing. Do they? I don't. I don't know. It depends on what they do with this D core and who they protect with the D core. That affects how many forwards, how many Ds.
Yeah, if you protect 4D, you're going to leave some.
Do you sign him and then leave him open though?
Yeah, I mean,
I
thing
don't
is,
know.
he is a perfect expansion team player, right?
Oh yeah,
Because he does
Oh,
all
yeah.
kinds of good things, great in the room. I could even see him being captain of an expansion team, but I don't know if they can protect him just looking at the numbers. It's going to be
I
tough.
know.
It's going to be very interesting.
It really is. It really is. Something else that's tough, by the way, is the Phillies. I'll throw
Yeah.
a couple your way here. So, this team to me, I'm a diehard Phillies guy every pitch. I react to 162 like it's an Eagle season, knowing that I'm being totally outrageous. But I
You're
just
one of
love
those, huh?
Yeah, but
Okay.
I know it's crazy. I do. But it's like, okay, so Matt Klentak, Andy McPhail, and Gabe Kapler. Horrendous experience. I'm watching the same product with Dave Dombrowski, proven winner, Joe Girardi, proven winner. So, what's going on here? Is it a John Middleton problem? Is it just the players on your roster aren't good enough? You got sloppy defense. I love Alec Boehm's future. Can't defend third base. I love Rhys Hoskins at the plate. Can't defend first base. So we have a first and third situation where we're horrendous in the field. I mean, I'm watching under 500 baseball, West Coast swing. I don't even know where to begin. But what do you see with this team right now? Where do you think the issues kind of lie?
Yeah, the one thing you didn't mention is Gabe Kapler happens to be managing the team with the best record in baseball right now.
In that division too, it's crazy.
It's amazing. Hey, I was never a Gabe hater. First of all, Gabe treated me awesome. He gave us great access and was always willing to explain moves and so forth. So, as a person, I have nothing with Gabe, but he didn't have any answers for this team to get things turned around. I don't think he was the problem, but he couldn't get things righted. But Joe Girardi, who I have the ultimate respect for as a baseball person, can't seem to get the answers either. So I don't think Gabe was the problem, is what I'm saying. So as we look forward now, what the Phillies did is they had their run, went through the downtime, and didn't take advantage through the draft. They had drafts where they were drafting pretty high, and they got Aaron Nola, and they got a couple here and there, Bohm, but they didn't flood their farm system with prospects. And it's more than the draft. It's also international. It's the whole thing, right? So their rebuild was not really happening as we moved through the mid-teens, right? They could see that. So what they did was they decided to go for the pump by buying success. And I didn't complain about it when they went out and signed Bryce Harper and McCutchen and traded for JT and, eventually signed Wheeler and all these moves, right? Because I can remember the excitement at the start of the 2019 season. I mean, the excitement of opening day, and remember that series against the Braves? And this team looked like this is a stock team. They are going to contend not only in the future, right now. And it didn't happen. They were a 500 team. And now the huge contract for Harper, they almost had to, from a PR standpoint, sign JT. Wheeler signing looks good right now. But the bottom line is they have a lot of these contracts now that moving forward as the years go by are not going to necessarily be positives anymore. Bryce, and I love Bryce, but he plays the game at such a pace. As he gets into his 30s, the injuries are only going to accelerate and be more frequent, right? And he's already having injury issues. JT's a catcher. Now, he's a very athletic guy, not tremendously injury prone, knock on wood, but he's a catcher. The pounding those guys take as he moves into his 30s, I can only see regression there. And these guys are signed to pretty long deals now, especially Harper, of course. And so where do they go? The farm system's still not loaded, and they've already spent almost to the luxury tax to try to win, and it hasn't gotten it done. So I don't know. I don't think they're going to be bad over the next little while, but are they going to be great? I don't know if they can do it. I mean,
is this
they're
a
in
good
a
enough
tough spot.
sell though? Like a five? What we see now. I just the problem is, you have the historic bullpen. Well, if you fix the bullpen, well, then maybe you make the playoffs that year. Well, now you have like one of the worst defenses I've ever seen in my life. Like, I'm watching Eflin out there, right? And I like Eflin, but you see spurts of the 6 innings where he's great, and then maybe he has a little bit of a hiccup. But my problem is you're forcing him to get 5 outs an inning at times because you're allowing these errors. And now a 12-pitch inning becomes a 22-pitch inning, and then you got to go to your bullpen. And sure, your bullpen's not as bad as it was before, but it can't hold up over 162 when you're giving these other teams so many more outs. So the problem is, I think they need to strip everything. But when you alluded to it, you signed Bryce Harper, you signed JT. DD's short term, it was only 2 years. Hopefully Bryson Stott's up then anyway. And Andrew McCutchen contract off the books. That was a disaster of a contract as well. And it's like, you can't strip it because of the commitments you made by signing these players in their primes, and you're just stuck. I think they are literally in a position where they are stuck. And if this is what you get, you can't sell this for many years. At some point, we're going to snap if we haven't already.
Yeah, it's tough because they're caught in that no man's land of being not great, but not bad.
Do you
if
trade
they were
Rhys
really
Hoskins?
bad, you just blow it up, right?
Yeah, I'm like, do you trade Rhys? Do you trade Nola? Do you try something new here to spark something?
Yeah, I will say this. Dave Dombrowski is very creative, and I don't see him sitting on this. I just don't. That's just not his MO. So I do think if this continues as we get closer to the trade deadline, there's going to be a pretty big move. That's just the way. The only thing is, Dave Dombrowski in his past has gone in where there have been great farm systems. He's kind of torn them apart a little bit, but he's made the deals because he had those prospects. He doesn't really have them with the Phillies right now. So he's even got his hands tied a little bit. So that means he's got to trade off the roster, for the most part, which is Rhys probably, or Aaron Nola, or somebody like that. I don't know how much what do they get for that? I mean, I think they have a better chance of hoping Aaron Nola starts pitching like Aaron Nola has in his past than trading him and getting somebody who can. For Rhys is interesting. I mean, his numbers are his batting average is never going to wow you or anything, but he produces. I don't know. He's a DH. What can I tell you? I mean,
he definitely is a DH.
And Bohm's looking very much the part of a DH as well.
And so is JT on the back end of that contract, and so is Bryce Harper by year 12. So we got a lot of DHs.
long time from now for those two, though. They're still. I mean, JT's outstanding right now defensively.
He is.
And Bryce, I mean, year by year, you can't tell. His first year with the Phillies, he looked really good defensively. So, I don't know. I'm with you. It's a tough situation there because they're just not bad enough to just completely destroy it. And they aren't, I don't think, good enough to really legitimately contend. I will say this, though. The division is so far below what I thought it was going to be. I mean, I thought this was going to be a real, I told anyone who would listen, Phillies have a chance to be pretty good this year, but they got a really tough division. I couldn't be more wrong. I mean, the division stinks, and the Phillies haven't been able to take advantage of it. I still think the Mets will hit a swoon, don't you, at some point?
Yeah, and then this Braves team, I don't know what's going on with their. Well, they had a lot of injuries in the beginning of their starting rotation, which screwed them up. But did you think you were going to get this from Freddie Freeman? Did you expect more? I don't know. Are the Braves team going to snap their fingers and go on a run at some point? They have enough talent to with that offense, but their pitching hasn't been able to hold up.
Yeah, I mean, the injuries have hurt the Braves in a big way.
Yeah.
I mean, they to lose the pitchers they lost really hurt them, but. Their offense, I can't explain that. I mean, it's been. I think the Braves are of all the teams, the team that could go on a run, and maybe just run away with the division. But I'm not sure with the pitching the way it is now. I mean, as they were expected to be constituted, I thought they were the best team in the division. I thought the Marlins would be better. I thought they were about ready to take another step. They haven't done that. The Nationals are also tricky. They could go on a run at any time too. But Strasburg, they've got injury issues too. So I don't know. The division's there for the taking. We sit here and talk about the Phillies, but if they go on any kind of run, and they are capable of going on a run, they have a good enough lineup. Certainly they could just start outscoring their pitching issues for a period of time, and they could actually win this division. And once you're in the playoffs anymore, you never know. You just never know. So we could be sitting here in October saying they're going to win it. But I do think the Phillies almost have to win in the next 2 or 3 years. because then the Harper contract and Real Muto and those things start to become probably a problem more than a help. Right now, they're very good players, I think. And I think, you go position by position, the Phillies stack up pretty well, from a position player standpoint. So they could win this division. They're not out of it. The division has left them in it, and they haven't played their best baseball outside of the first 4 games of the year. They haven't played their best baseball of the year yet. So, there's still hope for the Phillies this year. I'm just saying, big picture, I worry because they don't have the farm system, and they have long-term contracts for guys who are going to work into their 30s. That's usually the recipe for a bit of a downspell, a real downspell. Now, maybe they can build up the farm system while Harper and Real Muto and these guys age. That's not really the MO of Dombrowski, to build up farm systems, but I think he's a smart baseball man, and I think Sam Folds a smart baseball man. I think they can certainly do that. Hopefully they are beginning the process of getting that farm system fortified, because long-term, we've seen now in baseball, you can add to your team with free agency, but pretty much you win with building up that farm system and having some of those prospects. Because why? Those prospects for at least 3 years are cheap, and you can't have all expensive players unless you want to blow over that salary cap or the luxury tax, like the Dodgers and some of those teams. But Phillies have been reluctant to go there. And, when you're just shy of it, you spent a lot of money. If you go over it, you're spending a lot of money, because that tax is very punitive. I can understand why they don't want to do it, but it might leave them in that no man's land that we just talked about.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And then I watch guys like Spencer Howard, and I don't know. He's so good for the first 2 innings, and then his velocity dips 6 miles per hour, and he says it's because he ran to first base. It's like, I don't even know how to handle it.
Well, but I mean, here's a guy who in the minors hit 100 in the 9th inning of a no-hitter. So, I mean, I don't, minor leagues, it's the same mound. It's the same distance. I don't care who the hitters are. He's throwing he was 90th, and I think he even crawled close to or over 100 in that no-hitter, and in terms of the number of pitches, and he was throwing over. He touched 100 in the 9th inning of that. So if he could do it then, why can't he do it now? I've never been able to understand that.
Bizarre thing, and the pitch count and bullpen. I don't know if they have a plan with him, but it's unfortunate. It really is. So before I let you out of here, one more time with the broadcasting coaching camp, a little bit of description on that.
It's JJ Broadcasting Coaching at gmail.com if you have any questions in general about it. And you're going to post the link to the link that will basically take you to a sign-up page where you can get all the information on it. But it's 3 different camps, 2 seminars, one for kids up to 17, one for kids 18 and above, talking broadcast techniques, getting into the business, having perseverance in this business, which you have to have, and finding your niche, all that kind of stuff. For a 3-hour camp, a 3-hour seminar. And you can choose which one in, as I said, June, one in July, one in August, one in June is coming up this Saturday. And we're just going to have fun with it and interactive. I want questions. And then the chance for future mentorship at half price, where we can have one-on-one sessions and I can go over your clips and all that kind of stuff. So really looking forward to the first one here this week, and appreciate you letting me talk about it.
Absolutely, yeah, and I advise everybody to check that out because it will absolutely help. The amount of questions I get on Instagram, on Twitter, bro, it's how do you start in this business? What do you do? What do you do? I mean, this is a perfect opportunity to kind of get your foot in the door and start. So definitely take advantage of that. And with that being said, Jim, thank you so much for joining me. I had a blast just jumping around all these teams. It kind of helped me. It was a painful Sixers loss, and somehow we ended up on a painful Flyer season and a painful Phillies conversation. So
I don't know how in the world I helped you. Yeah. Can we talk about John Rahm? Maybe that'll make you feel better. He won the U.S. Open.
Those fist pumps got me fired up there on those last couple
those are 2 great putts. I mean, we're talking, those were big breaking putts to hit those on back to, and thank God he did.
Now you got me thinking about my golf game, and now I'm back in the negatives.
Even worse, because I know you're not making those putts. But I will say this. Thank God he made those putts, because to that point, the back 9 was the biggest demolition derby I've ever seen. And big names. I mean, guys, I saw Colin Morikawa, who is one of the best ball strikers around, blade a chip shot. I'm like, did he just do that? I can't believe it. He just bladed it. And he blew up to a double bogey. If he pars that hole, he is right in there, right? It was a par 5. And what happened to DeChambeau? Oh my God. I mean, he had a snowman on a par 4. When do you see
I see those all the time.
Me, I know, you and I. But I'm saying this is a guy who led the U.S. Open at the turn on Sunday, and he had a snowman and ended up, 8 over par, I think, on the back 9 or something. I mean,
ridiculous.
It's just, it was the stuff that was happening, and Rahm at least grabbed it and took it. Otherwise, it was just everybody backing up, and who would back up the least. So, but I'm sorry. I thought I'd bring up something good for you, and I brought up memories and thoughts of your own game, which I know in my case.
We'll do this again sometime.
We'll have to golf sometime, bros.
Yes.
I'm getting back into that too, I think. Yeah.
Cool. All right, yeah, we'll do that. We'll make something happen. We'll definitely get an opportunity to do that. So thank you.
And remember, my
much.
final comment, I don't want people to think I want the Sixers to trade Joel Embiid, all right? I just think that all the talk about Ben, to me, does give him a bit of a free pass. Now, you're saying they're interrelated, and they very well might be, Embiid's performance and Ben's issues, but clearly they are to some degree interrelated. But I do think that I just expected, off of what I've read and heard and seen of this guy, for the first time in his time here, I was able to watch back-to-back games with him, and I came away thoroughly disappointed. I mean, I thought he was going to be a guy who, when the game was on the line, took the game and just ran with it, and I didn't see that. So is this just an anomaly, or is that the Joel Embiid? Because if that's the Joel Embiid, you're going to have to get some other players in there to win that championship. I really think so. I do think he's an amazing player. And there were times in these playoffs, unfortunately not in the fourth quarter very often, but there were times where he was unstoppable. The stuff he does is a 7'2" guy. I mean, it's just unbelievable. But I didn't see it at crunch time as much as I thought I would. That's basically all I'm saying.
No, I think you're right, because you watch Kevin Durant, and yes, he's not at that level yet, and I think he's 26, 27. There's a part of the growing, part of the center. Yeah, hit me.
Would you take him over Giannis? I mean, is Giannis, who's better?
See, that's interesting. Giannis can't shoot, and I know he's willing to shoot, but he can't shoot. So it opens up that door again of, they might get to the NBA Finals, and he was big in Game 7. I'm not going to deny that, but I think I'd still take Joel Embiid. I would. There's something, and maybe it's just because I am stuck in this, shooter, Ben Simmons, that whole drama. But if you can't shoot a basketball in today, I just have so many questions. But they might make the finals because now they're playing the Hawks, and you can get by with not shooting against the Hawks if you're at least willing to attack like Giannis is. But I'll take Joel to answer your question.
Yeah, I probably would too. But I will say what I saw from Giannis that I didn't see from Joel in that Game 7 of the other series, he wanted it.
Yeah.
I mean, and I can't say that because Joel did have a couple of huge baskets, big three and all that in the fourth quarter last night, but I didn't see that at all in Game 5, and I saw it sporadic. Game 6, even though they won, I thought he missed some key shots. I mean, Giannis, you're right. He can't. He doesn't have that outside shot option, but or at least not consistently. But, man, he takes it to the hole. And when he got it, set his mind to it, it was interesting. I'd rather have Embiid, though. He's a better all-around player. But, again, just off of watching him through not only this series but also the Washington series, I didn't think he was as clutch as I expected him to be. Let's just leave it at that.
We're watching him grow. That's all. That's all I'll say. We're watching him grow, and he'll learn how to do that through these painful losses.
That happens. That does happen. But is his health going to hold up for that growth? Because he walks like an old man already. I mean, he's really. I mean, he's old for his age. Would you not agree?
Oh yeah. I mean, he's physically. The amount of miles that I think they calculated the miles he ran up and down the floor last year, and for 7'2", whatever he weighs, to do that, it's just not a human thing to do.
That's true.
It makes a lot of sense. But here we go. There's
interesting off seasons for both the winner teams.
For everything. And
the Eagles, we didn't even talk about the Eagles, but I have no clue about the Eagles because I don't know anything about the head coach. So it's going to have so much to do with him, I think, and also the quarterback. So, it's an interesting time in Philly sports. I'm sure people would rather have it be interesting in another way, but there's a lot of uncertainty, I guess, around the sports teams in Philly right now.
Yep, makes for a lot of topics. But I want to thank everybody so much for listening, and I will see you on the next one.